Hi everyone, Stepan here. It's Thursday, so we're going to continue the series on the great Mikhail Tal. And today we are going to have a look at his first Immortal sacrifice. Now, Tal was known for his sacrificial, tactical, very aggressive play, but it's less known that he was just as good tactically when he was very young. So this game proves that it features an absolutely remarkable attacking plan. And even before that, the game was positionally and strategically a masterpiece. I'm going to divide the game into six interesting points, which I'm going to be doing from now on, and I will highlight them. And I will also put the 6 instructive points in the PGN notes, which you can find below. So it's Mikhail Tal versus Leonov, played in Riga 1949. This was his first serious tournament. He played it when he was 13 years old. And from his book, Life and Games of Mikhail Tal, he says, my first serious tournament was the Riga Youth Championship. At the time, I had a 4th category rating. Now, in Croatia, 4th category rating is 1700, so it may be similar to the Soviet Union. And he says it was a pretty low rating, but according to some unofficial data, I was considered to be a promising player, and I was allowed into the championship. So I assume his opponent was higher rated, at least officially, than him. Now, he started the tournament well, with 3 out of 3. We saw the first game last week. But then at the end of the tournament, his life struggle began, and this is the first time he ended in a hospital. During a tournament, he had scarlet fever, and that kept happening to him throughout his career. Okay, another thing I would like to mention, this game is a recipe for e4 players on how to beat the Caro-Kann. I'm very upset to say that, because I love the Caro-Kann. That has been my main opening for 4 years. And this is just one of the most annoying ways for white to play. So let's see what happened. e4 by Tal, we have c6, d4, d5, and Tal plays the exchange variation. Now this has been favored by Bobby Fischer, for example, and it's a very solid way to play, seemingly equal, because the pawn structure is symmetrical, but it's not even close to equal. White has a slight positional edge, and black has 2 ways he could play. Both of them are very hard to achieve. That being said, it's not a lost position for black or anything, but I believe white is better. I've been on the black side of this for 100 times. So the first move is common theory today, bishop d3, developing the bishop to the best possible diagonal. Black continues with knight f6. Now knight c6 is the main move today, simply provoking the move c3 very early on. But knight f6 played, which is still okay. The position could transpose. Now, one thing I would like to mention, knight f6 is not played as the main move for a very specific reason. Black is going to have a hard time developing his pieces here. Now, the light-squared bishop would ideally like to come to g4, which is impossible until knight f3 is played. So white will often try to play knight f3 after he plays either h3 or he plays something else. And all other squares for this bishop are occupied, which you can see after the 4th move, bishop d3 for white. Also, this bishop on f8, its best chance is to occupy the d6 square, which is why black will sometimes, even on move 4, play the move queen c7 to try and prevent white from occupying the f4 square with his bishop, therefore making bishop d6 much stronger. Okay, black plays knight f6. In my opinion, he played it for a wrong reason. It's played today. It's not the main move, but he didn't understand what the idea behind it was. And Tal played h3 first. Now this is the first note. This is the first instructive point. This is a great example of just why the exchange is annoying for black. Black is not given a good development plan. His bishops, in particular, the c8 bishop, have no good squares. This bishop now has no good square on the board. If black plays bishop b7, the bishop is useless, so his best chance is to play bishop a6, which takes time and sort of goes against what black should be doing. I'll show you that in a second. Here, Leonov played h6, which has nothing to do with the position. He completely misunderstood what white is trying to do. White doesn't want to play bishop g5. That's a move you almost never play in the exchange variation. You want to play bishop f4. Therefore, h6 is a waste of time, because black isn't really going to be playing g5. And in this position, instead of h6, black had to continue with the normal knight c6, provoking the move c3, and I'll show you what the move knight f6 is about. In this position, black goes for g6, this fianchetto variation, in which after knight f3, black continues with bishop f5, conceding to a positional disadvantage, but getting the e4 square if white should take. You should know, and this is a note too, for all of you e4 players and for all of you Caro-Kann players, white taking on f5 has been played and it's okay, but it's by no means better for white. Because now, for example, bishop f4, e6, queen b3, queen b6, the position is perfectly equal. Black's use of the e4 square more than compensates for the doubled pawns, and with the queens maybe being traded off, it's really not a big deal at all. So this idea with bishop f5 is something you should remember. The more common continuation for white is just to allow black to exchange that bishop, and that way white can retain some control over the e4 square. But black, as I said, played h6, which is not a good move. Tal, of course, continues with bishop to f4, and now e6. And now we see the issue. Look at this one. Okay, it's never going to develop unless it gets to a6. This knight will have a hard time getting into the game. And white's pieces are very harmonious. Knight to f3, bishop to d6. This is the best black can do with his other bishop. So takes, queen takes. And now Tal plays c3. This is the third note, the third point I would like to highlight. This is a Karlbatz structure in reverse. Usually this would be the black position in the Queen's Gambit declined. This is the exact same pawn structure, the Karlsbad, and black has two common plans. One of them is to castle queenside. Well, this is the third plan, which I don't even want to mention as one of the two common plans. Castle queenside, go for e5 and just try to checkmate tactically. The two common plans are to play sensibly with either a minority attack, for which black's pieces really should be developed, and then black plays a6, b5 or rook b8, b5, and then tries to undermine this pawn. So for example, black can continue with a6 here. This is not the best variation, I'm just showing you an example of a minority attack. Knight b to d2, b5. Now I've played a plan like this with black in many such positions. Knight e5, white occupies e5, the biggest hole in the black position, and now b4. The idea behind the minority attack is to attack this structure. White of course has a 3-2 on the queen side. If you can ruin that structure, either isolating the a pawn and the d pawn, or by making c3 a backwards pawn, then you have a great position. So for example, queen b3, preparing to take on c3 with the pawn, with the queen, excuse me. So bc3, queen c3, you have an isolated d4 pawn, and if you don't play queen b3, if you, for example, castle, then black would take, b takes, and now you have a permanent target on c3. A very common idea is knight c6, knight a5, knight c4, and you can see many example games in the Queen's Gambit declined, exchange variation and other variations, and in the exchange Caro-Kann. So this would be a plan with the minority attack. Instead of that, black plays the move knight c6, we have castles, black castles now, and queen e2. Note 4. Very important point. The second plan black could go for, apart from the minority attack, is breaking the position open with e5. And with the move queen e2, which is the absolute best move in the position, you are controlling his first plan of going for the minority attack. You're also controlling his second plan of breaking the position open with e5. Now, if white manages to keep control over e5, then a knight e5, as happened in the game later, is going to cramp the position for black completely, and he's not going to be able to develop his pieces. Okay, black plays rook e8. I'm going for e5, and now knight e5, stopping e5. Okay, in this position, if knight e5, then you lose a piece. To the e5, you just lose a knight. Black plays queen c7, now preparing for knight e5. Now if white does, let's say white does nothing, then takes, takes, and here would actually be okay for black, because after something like f4, it's really not clear what white is going to do. If he continues with f5, well then fine, his pawn is going to drop. Okay, and black plays queen c7. Of course, Tal knows what's going on and he plays f4. And after this, the position is strategically much better for white, very close to winning. In this position, you simply don't have a good move. Knight takes e5 is obviously bad. Leaving this knight on e5 is obviously bad. Look at your pieces. Look at the weaknesses on f7 and g6. The queen is ready to come in. The rook is ready to come in. The bishop is already perfect. Here you could go for a plan with knight d2, rook c1, bishop b1, queen c2. And you have pressure along the c file and more importantly on h7. So already a very good position for white. Perhaps the best try was simply to give up a central pawn to free up his position, and now either take here and go for b6, bishop b7, giving himself some activity, or, well, not taking and delaying that until you play bishop b7. And in this case, black would actually be okay, very close to okay, because for a pawn, he managed to develop his pieces. In fact, the d5 square is going to be very useful. Instead of that, he played knight takes d5, and this is just no good. Again, knight e4 was the best attempt. Instead, he played knight h7. And now, Tal starts the attack, queen h5. This is already extremely dangerous. Everything is weak. Okay, rook e7 played, defending f7, knight a3, and this is a perfect maneuver. So knight e2 would have been okay, but what do you do with the knight on f3? It's not easy to get into these squares. So Tal is playing knight c2, knight e3, knight g4, knight f6, or knight h6. He recognizes the weaknesses. This is where you can see his attacking prowess and tactical genius when he was just 13. Black plays a6, too little, too late, I'm afraid. Knight c2, queen d7. This is a move I partially understand. I believe his plan is queen e8 to defend the position and to give the bishop the d7 square. But why play a6 in that case? Okay, knight e3, Tal simply continues his plan. Black continues his defensive attempts. And now, okay, the final point I would like to highlight is the incredible sacrifice Tal played, which the engine doesn't see at first. The engine wants to play moves that sort of improve the position, but not really. And I remember analyzing this game a while back. Actually, it's mentioned in Tal's Life and Games. Just briefly, the moves are given, no annotations. Pause the video. How do you continue the attack with a move that's so crushing black should resign after it? There's simply no response. White to play and win. Okay, the move was rook to f6. And this reminds me of Fischer-Benko, the Pirc defense game, where it was the same pawn structure and white played rook to f6 to make sure h7 could never be defended. This move stops f5. If black manages to play f5, he's going to be able to defend. If f5 is not played, he's not defending. Now, this is a rook sacrifice, but white is already a bishop and the rook up, so no problem. Look at his pieces and look at black's pieces. Black is playing without a rook and without a bishop. Now let's look at the two obvious moves that lose, knight takes and pawn takes. If knight takes, this loses immediately because e takes f6, and now let's say you take. Probably the best move would be queen f8. If you take, then I simply take on h6, and the only way to defend the mate on h7 is to play f5, excuse me, and after f5, knight g4, you can't take because queen h7 mate, and let's say, I don't even know what to suggest here. Obviously knight f6 is threatened, which is game over, so for example f6 and knight f6, I mean, I don't know what to suggest. And the other variation in which the knight doesn't take, in which black accepts the piece sacrifice, this is a slow motion attack, a bit harder to see, which is why this sacrifice is incredible, which is probably why the engines don't see it as first as being completely winning. So the way to continue here, if you want, you can pause the video and try to calculate this, try to work the sacrifice out. I mean, what happens if he just takes your rook? Okay, so the idea is, first you take the knight, king takes bishop, and now you play knight g4. So 2 pawns attacked, very soon it's going to be checkmate if you don't do anything. So you have to play queen f8, you have to defend 1, otherwise you'll just get mated. And now the slow motion attack continues, rook f1. f5, the best defensive try, obviously not allowing the rook into the game, but it's still okay. Knight f6, king h8, and now rook f3. And rook f3, rook g3, you're simply going to lose. Okay, and that's it. So taking the rook would just lose. Black played queen f8, but it's no better. Here, Tal played the only slightly imprecise move. He moved his rook away because queen h6 no longer works. There are no mates after pawn takes rook. However, he had a much stronger continuation, which would have been simply crushing. With tempo, bishop h7, king h7, rook a f1. Take my rook, I got another one, so takes. takes, and again you are going to lose to knight g4. These three pieces are out of play. They're out of play. Black is playing with the queen and the king, and white has a queen, a rook, and a knight. Okay, instead he played rook f4, which is the attack is just still crushing. Bishop d7 played, finally developing his last rook and his bishop. Knight g4. More pressure on black. Bishop e8, a sad defensive move, and now knight f6. I mean, you have to take this. Otherwise, I just take your knight and then win your queen, and it's over. So knight f6, ef6, attacking the rook, attacking the g-pawn. The rook moves, rook c7, and now fg7, king g7, and the final crushing move. Hopefully you can find it. Queen e5 check, just picking up the rook. In this position, black resigned. If, for example, f6, then you just pick up the rook and bishop d7, and you can just keep on winning material. It's over. So in this position, obviously, white has two rooks, a bishop and a queen, and black is the one material down. So an absolutely astonishing game, and learn from this, both from a theoretical, strategic, positional, and tactical perspective. This was a masterpiece. Tal was just a genius. I had no idea. He's never been one of my favorite players, and after only 2 games in this series, I'm slowly changing my opinion. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think, and stay tuned for more chess. Bye bye.